welcome to This Week in Pharmacy. I'm your host, founder of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, Todd Eury. That's spelled E-U-R-Y. See down there? The RX Podfather for short. And that is, I don't know if that's a self-given name, or I know the Sean Nairn from Pittsburgh used to call me the Toddcaster. And I thought that was kind of fun, but I think RX Podfather. I was like, you know what? I think I like the RX Podfather more. Do you have nicknames? Do you ever come up? Does your kids, does your friends, does your coworkers ever give you a nickname and then something sticks and it kind of describes what you are and who you do and what it is, and maybe double Farm D or Farm D out there, or Farm Tech, or whatever you're doing? It's a new year. This is 2025. We have so much going on already. I'm so excited about what's happening, not only at this network, but our profession. You know, I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I'm always going to bring the shinier side of what's happening in our industry, even though we're still going through a lot of disruption in pharmacies happening, but it's good disruption. I think this is a new age. If you've followed us on LinkedIn, you see a lot of our posts are about the new age of pharmacy and how pharmacists' roles are changing, how a pharmacist positioned in a specialty is now becoming much more relevant and much more important in disease state management, in pediatrics and geriatrics, in HIV, in transgender care, whatever it is. Pharmacists are now being honed in on for their expertise in medication management. However, if you follow Jamie Wilkie on LinkedIn like I do, the Pharm D is not just about the element of pharmacy, but your Pharm D and what you've done over the years, the experience, the education that you have. There's other things that you're going to be sought after. Technology companies are going to come after you. Small businesses that are come after you. Startups are going to come after you. And I want you to remember that. And I want you to reach out to Jamie. If you don't want to practice pharmacy per se, and you want to do something else, that is the person, Dr. Jamie Wilkie, that you should be connected with on LinkedIn. And I just want to give her a shout out on what she's doing to help transform what it is to be a pharmacist. And maybe that doesn't mean being in pharmacy. And if it does, that's great. If it does, and you listen to TWIRx, I want you to start getting interactive with the show, because we want to bring in more minds into the show and more interactiveness and what's important to you in your profession, and how that's going to impact patient care, how that's going to impact what pays us all. And I think that's important. Hey, today is a really fun show. I have never done anything like this before. We are going to be working with one of our network members, Anisha Patel, to build better podcasts, and to teaching you as a provider, as a pharmacist, as a technician, as a nurse, as a physician. We don't care. The whole program is going to be designed around professionalism and the difference between your content and the layperson. And in my opinion, if you're a pharmacist and you're doing a podcast, your level of quality needs to be levels up better than the average Joe who might be talking about golf or something like that. And that's because you are a professional. You're a medical professional. You save people's lives. And with that, your podcast should be levels up as well. And I've never been a podcast teacher per se. I mean, we've helped our clients launch their podcast. Of course, we have 28 wonderful clients that are still part of our network, growing content for the profession. But if I was a pharmacist and I said, I want to start a podcast, how do I do that? I just don't have the bandwidth to do that. So when we get into the network, 42 members of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, and we have someone that's passionate about teaching our professionals how to do what they're doing, that's what today's feature is going to be about, which I'm really excited. Hey, we're going to jump into TWIRx news first. And I want to bring in our guest because they want to be part of our news. I want to welcome Sunjay and Anisha to TWIRx. And remember, you have to TWIRx. Anybody can TWIRx.
TWIRx. TWIRx. I don't even know what that is. Sounds like a chocolate bar that we have here in the UK called Twix.
Twix.
Is that a thing over there? You have that too? Okay.
It's one of my favorite candy bars.
Yeah. There you go. So TWIRx, that's what I think of when I hear TWIRx.
Well,
And much like a TWIRx, if I try and twerk, I'll snap in half.
or eat the other half, whichever comes first. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too, Todd.
Anisha, I've really appreciated your leadership in the short amount of time that I've known you. It's been it has to be over a year now. And your contribution to the network and the content that you're developing, and now this special 3-part series that we're going to be talking about. I'm just excited. What are you guys excited about the new year? You're not allowed to talk about we have to save the launching your podcast in 30 days for our feature interview. But other than what we're going to be talking about today, what are you excited about?
I'm excited. The Sunjay got me an incredible Christmas gift, the Stephen Bartlett 1% diary. I've been using it for 10 days, and I'm not really one for New Year's resolutions, but Stephen Bartlett's diary is freaking awesome. It is so good. It breaks down your goals into 90-day sort of allotments, and you work towards your goals in 1% increments, and it's just perfect. I can't believe I haven't thought of this idea myself, but I've been using it for 10 days, and I'm genuinely following it, and I'm genuinely excited about it. I've done yoga every single day. I've read 10 to 20 pages of a book every single day. I've meditated every day. I've tried to stay patient with my children. That's a tough one, but I'm working on it. I'm really working on it. And another one of the goals was to gain closer connections to my family members, and especially Sunjay. So I've got ideas for date nights and holidays for us. We are stepping away from being parents and getting a bit more connection. And I'm excited for that.
Sunjay, this sounds more like a gift for you, because a happy woman in a relationship makes all the difference in a man's life. So I think you bought this selfishly.
Of course, I bought myself one as well. I mean, that's why the one I was just showing you wasn't just a gift for my wife; it was a gift for the sake of our relationship, Todd. I'm excited for the hot weather that I'm manifesting is gonna come. We're closer to it. We're 1 month closer to it. So that's what I'm excited for. I don't do cold, as many people that know me will know. So I'm gritting it in, what are we had -4, which I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, 20 something, 18 Fahrenheit. It's bloody cold. So I'm excited for the warm weather, but I'm excited for the growth. I know we're going to talk about podcasts, but I'm excited for this explosion in podcasts, because podcasts are just getting bigger and better, and more people are paying attention to it. So this thing that we've been doing for so long is suddenly getting all this limelight. I'm seeing reports coming left, right, and center why you should be doing one. So I'm super excited that we're in the right place at the right time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We are excited as well. I'm excited to be working with both of you on this special project that we'll be talking about. Before we get to that, I do want to do TWIRx news, because there's a lot happening in our industry. And if you are a multi-site owner, I hope you're going to the Clearwater Beach, Florida gathering, February 19th through 22nd, the Multiple Locations Conference. This is where pharmacy owners that have 3, 5, 10, sometimes 20 locations come together to brainstorm. This is a different environment than the NCPA, National Community Pharmacists Association's annual. But I'm going to definitely go to this. I'm going to be doing some interviews. We're going to be working with several organizations to talk about some themes. One of those themes is Sartre Retroverna. And you notice my accent when I said Sartre Retroverna. You have to put the little, can you, I want to hear Sunjay say Sartre Retroverna.
Say it again.
Sartre Retroverna. Say that.
Sartre Retroverna.
See, you have it. You have
I got it. I can do.
Anyway, this team designs some of the most gorgeous pharmacies that I've ever seen in my life. The styling, the lighting, the whole attitude of changing your traditional pharmacy into something that's very special, especially when you start selling cash-based higher skin quality products or supplements or whatever you're doing. But I just want to give a shout out to that team and how hard they're working in the United States for the United States pharmacists and pharmacies and transforming them. Meet us up at the Multi-Site Locations Conference coming up here in February. All right, I do want to get to an important event that's happening today, and that is the Modern Medical Mafia, which is a deep dive into the crime ring running America's healthcare system, the PBMs. It's going to be happening. The docuseries is going to launch in 10 days from today, which is the pre-launch today, actually. The pre-release launch events, is celebration. It's going to be happening today, January 10th at 7 p.m. Central Time. They're having an event over in Rio, Wisconsin. They're going to be featuring United States Representative Buddy Carter from the great state of Georgia, and the one and only Jake Auchincloss from Massachusetts. Jake is an amazing PBM fighter and legislator for the state of Massachusetts, but he's been on our show several times. He's been on several pharmacy podcasts throughout the market. And I find it interesting that we're getting finally so much attention and how bent and how weird our pharmacy system is in the United States. Anisha, you don't have to put up with PBMs the way that the United States does. We're kind of hostage right now. I'm not sure if you've heard about PBMs, but how does the payment system work in the UK?
I know all about PBMs, but not from my role in the UK, specifically from my role in Abu Dhabi when I worked for Cleveland Clinic and managing private healthcare and working with Epic in the hospital. But in the UK, everything is sort of government owned in terms of pharmacy and the health service. It's called the National Health Service, NHS. We do have private health as well, but you don't have to pay for your prescriptions in the same way or get insurance approvals. You get prescribed, whatever's on your kind of local formulary wherever you live. And if you're under the age of 18 and in school education, your medications are free. If you're over the age of 60, your medications are free. There are certain medical exemptions like type 1 diabetes, hypothyroid, specific cancers where your medications would also be free. Otherwise, you pay a flat rate per prescription, which is around $13. And that's usually for a month's supply.
It seems so much more cut and dry. I like the sound of it because the impact of what's happened here in the United States is people not getting the coverage that they're supposed to. And in this case, the reason why the modern medical mafia is even in existence is because the impact that it had on one family, the Schmitnicks. Bill Schmitnick is now integrated into the pharmacy profession. We're so excited to be having him back on TWIRx and This Week in Pharmacy, as well as other podcasts throughout the industry. But his son, Cole, passed away because he was looking for an inhaler. He went to a chain store. The chain store told him that his insurance had changed and it was going to cost him $600 out of pocket. He did not have that money at the time. He started to feel like he wasn't able to breathe properly. He went home, and I think later that evening he passed out, and he then passed away. So that's an example of how wrong our system in the United States is. It's very bent. It's very anti-patient. It's all about the entities. And so I want the listeners to pay attention to this and support this movie just by watching it or sharing the link that you see, which is called modernmedicalmafia.com. Pay attention to that movie. If you can watch some of the live events tonight that are going to be put out by Pharmacists United for Truth and Transparency, known as PUT. Please take a look at that. They have their YouTube live event set up right now. It's actually out there, but it's of course, it's not going to go live until 8 p.m. Eastern time tonight. If you have an opportunity to watch, if you have an opportunity to share this event, that would be very important to us. And I want to move on. I got to get to some good news, because this woman that you see on your screen right now, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see Dr. Jenna Quinn screaming, lifting her hands up in glee, in excitement. Jenna is one of my heroes. She's an entrepreneur. She started a company called Perfecting Peds, and it's all about dialing into the needs of our children. And because of her passion in her consultancy as a one-woman band, she now has an entire team working with her. She has a company. She has several pharmacists that are dialing in. And guess what? Just this morning, Jenna announced that they received a 1,900 pediatric patients contract, which is just enormous. So I just want to give a shout out and how proud we are of Jenna's work and everything that she's doing. Hooray for her. And we're going to continue to support Jenna. She's actually a podcaster on the Pharmacy Podcast Network. She has a wonderful podcast. But we're gonna continue to support her in her trek and her journey. I know, Anisha, that you probably know her from the network, but I know that you guys have talked on LinkedIn too.
Yeah, I also interviewed her on the Pharmacist Diaries podcast, and I love Jenna. So yeah, I'm so happy for her, and I'm so pleased to see all the good news over the last few months for her as well, for Perfecting Peds.
Absolutely. So some funny story about Jenna and her daughter, beautiful daughter. I think she has 3 or 4 daughters actually, but one of her youngest ones attended the Pennsylvania Pharmacist Association annual event because she was asked to come and speak. And we got to talk before. I got to meet her daughter. So cute, very sassy, very intelligent. She goes up on stage. She does her presentation. Everything's great. Comes down, kind of crouches down because her daughter was off to the side the whole time having to watch this adult presentation. And she's like, honey, she goes, how'd mommy do? And she's like, I don't know. It was kind of boring. And I'm just like, all right, at least that's good feedback. That's about as honest feedback as you can get. But I guess if you're only 6, or I think she was 5 or 6 or something like that. But I love that story. I love the fact that she is so family oriented, and really it's like sharpening a pencil. It keeps her sharp as a provider in regards to the needs of her own children and her own life. And that's kind of the world that you're living as well, Sunjay and Anisha. You guys are professionals. You're a pharmacist. You're in healthcare. Sunjay's our tech nerd. You have a family. You have a business. Sunjay, how do you like juggle this and keep this all going and keep your business growing? How's that work from your perspective?
People ask me that all the time. I don't know. I don't have a square answer for you, really. It's just, I think when you're doing things that you love, you make time for it, right? It's the things that you don't like. I've been there. I've been in a job which I hate, and I didn't like going to work, and life felt like a drag. But when you start to fill your days with things you actually want to be doing, then you just kind of find the time for it, and you schedule things in, you time block, you make sure things happen. And things, look, it's not always perfect. Let's get me wrong. I mean, Anisha mentioned at the beginning here that we're trying to make time for ourselves because we've probably forgotten about that since we've had the kids. So things do go way late, but I think that's the key really for me, is just making sure that I'm engaging in activities every day that bring me joy, it talks about 6-year-olds, what do 6-year-olds like doing more than anything else? Having fun, man. Who said that adults can't have fun? When did that class happen? I missed it, because you know what? If I'm not having fun, then see ya, I'm out.
That's a good point. And we have to remember to have fun. That's why I like doing this show. It really brings a whole element of, we're in a stressful profession where we know our pharmacists and technicians are getting beat up out in the field. So why not have something weekly that we can kind of get together and talk about what's happening in the industry and get together. But we have a special feature today that's going to be about podcasting, and what a wonderful topic for us to talk about. I've been doing this for 16 years and it keeps transforming. I have to keep leveling up. So we're going to be talking about launching your podcast in 30 days with Anisha's amazing group that she's come up with. I say that you're a cheater, Anisha, because you have the power of Sunjay to be able to do all your videoing and editing and all of his magic sauce that he sprinkles onto it. But when we return, we're going to take a quick break and listen to a message from one of our wonderful sponsors that help this show keep going. But when we return, you're not going to want to miss Behind the Mic, launching your podcast in 30 days. We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Independent Pharmacy Cooperative, widely known as IPC. Established in 1983, IPC is the nation's largest group purchasing organization owned by independent pharmacy. With a mission of maximizing the success of community pharmacists, IPC works to provide members with access to effective programs and services designed to enhance profitability for independent pharmacy. Read more about our mission by checking out our website at ipcrx.com. That's ipcrx.com.
Hey, we're back. This is This Week in Pharmacy, and I am excited about today's feature episode and feature interview because, as a podcaster, and I was doing this all by myself, 2009, launched the very first podcast about our profession. It's still out on YouTube. If you Google, I forget what the name of it was the Pharmacy Podcast or the Pharmacy Technology Resource Podcast. It's embarrassing. It sounded horrible. I used to have to dial into an 800 number to do all of my interviews on an old system called Blog Talk Radio. Technology has advanced now. If you're in podcasting today and you're starting day one, you are years ahead from where I was and from where Anisha was and from where Sunjay was. In comparison to 5 and even 2 years ago, for that matter. So I'm excited about this ability to teach our pharmacists, to teach even technicians, people in our profession. Like I said, nurses, physicians, we don't care. But Behind the Mic is an entire ecosystem that Anisha and Sunjay have built. And I want to turn this over to Anisha first and just tell us, number one, how'd you get into podcasting? And then number two, what is this Behind the Mic, and why are you so passionate about helping others in our profession and professionals launching their podcast in 30 days?
Oh, I'm so excited. I love this topic because I'm so passionate about it. And I feel like genuinely podcasting has changed my life. And I get so excited to speak to other people about it. I mean, I'm a traditional pharmacist by background. I started my life in hospital. I'm currently a specialist pediatric pharmacist like Jenna, and specifically in palliative care. But my journey hasn't always been a love of pediatrics. I have been a generalist, kind of done a residency, rotated to lots of different specialist areas. I met Sunjay back in 2011 when I was a resident, and I was living in the UK. He was living out in Dubai. And so we had this long distance, crazy relationship. For 3 years, I would take on loads of additional night shifts at the hospital and then have extra days off so I could do these 4 to 5 day, 7-hour journeys to Dubai for a love story. And eventually I decided, hey, I'm going to move out to the UAE and become a pharmacist abroad and just go on this amazing adventure, which I absolutely loved. I really enjoyed working in emergency services, which was new for me. And part of that role was Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. I worked for Cleveland Clinic, so I got exposed to the US system and a completely new hospital, learning all about Epic. That was amazing. And then we kind of had children, moved back to the UK, and I fell into pediatrics, but I loved education. And so I started teaching at a pharmacy school. And my journey with podcasting started because when I was teaching, pharmacy students, and here in the UK, pharmacy students start their journey at the age of 18, so straight out of high school. So they're really young. They don't necessarily know exactly what they want to do. They haven't had that kind of undergraduate degree to figure out who they are, what they want to be, what they're passionate about. And they enter into this world of pharmacy and becoming a professional and not necessarily understanding exactly what this career opportunity can give them once they qualify as pharmacists 4 years later. And when I was looking at how we educate them from a university point of view, it's very traditional. They go to these careers fairs. They might speak to people when they're on kind of their placements, where they go into hospitals or community pharmacies, or even if they go into the industry. But a lot of students felt really confused. And a podcast just seemed like an incredible way to educate my students on a week-to-week basis by sharing these stories of pharmacists from all over the globe, what they do, why they do it. And it gave me an opportunity to also showcase our profession, because I feel like pharmacy are generally very quiet in comparison to other healthcare professionals like doctors and nurses. And I really wanted to showcase what pharmacy has to offer, especially because in the last sort of decade, the diversity with the roles that we have. I mean, like you said, Jamie Wilkie is a pharmacist who really advocates for the unconventional pathways because there is so much coming up. And now the podcast has been around for 4 years. 171 episodes, and there are so many opportunities that are being raised through a podcast and through storytelling.
That's awesome. And that reminds me of, so many of our members on the PPN, their own trek, and how they realized doing something for others and educating others was doing something for them. And that's for me, I've learned more about my industry through podcasting and listening and learning and interviewing others, thousands of interviews, thousands of episodes, where I'm able to extract, go back, listen again, and then go to the next level. And that's what today's this is the first part of a 3-part series that I'll be doing with Anisha and Sunjay over the next 2 more weeks. So this is the first one. But behind the mic is an entire ecosystem that if you are interested in podcasting, you should take a look at this. And once again, just go to anisha-andsunjay.kit.com. But if you can't remember that link, don't worry. It's going to be in the show notes. We're going to be sharing it on LinkedIn. We're going to be sharing it on Twitter and Instagram and other places, because we're going to market this series for the rest of the quarter. And the reason is because we want to get people plugged into leveraging podcasting as an extra way of getting your messaging and your branding and your ideas out there. And I'm selfish about podcast around pharmacists. I don't build podcasts or work with physicians yet. We do have collaborations, of course, or even our wonderful nurses. But I really concentrate on pharmacists specifically. And I said to Anisha when she came up with this idea that I love it because I don't have time to teach people the basics, which are so important in accelerating their success based on all of the things that the 3 of us have done, that we've made mistakes. And now we're navigating our participant in this launching your podcast in 30 days. And then, of course, Sunjay is the master Jedi of all things, best equipment to use and everything that is involved in getting started. But I want to turn it over to Sunjay. So what is your ideas around teaching people? Because it's an interesting difference from doing it yourself versus teaching. And I've learned that I do it better when I do some teaching. I actually feel like I do better in what the delivery is of the end product or service. But what do you think about doing the behind the mic?
Yes, thanks, Todd. So I've always gravitated towards things in my career and my job where I'm teaching people. And just as you just said there, Todd, I learn something better if I'm teaching it, right? There's a saying here, and I can't think of it at the top of my head, but it's like you learn more when you actually teach something. So I've always done that, and when Anisha met me, when she talked about that journey when we were living, I was living abroad. I was actually working in the fitness industry as a fitness trainer, personal trainer. I coached people on nutrition, so I was always coaching and teaching people how to live healthier lives. And I always joked with Anisha is that, you fix people by giving them pills, and I fix them by giving them, genuine good lifestyle advice, which can benefit them in the long run. But, that's what led me into podcasting, right? I would spend hours and hours, just like you, listening to health wellness, lifestyle, mental health related podcasts, because I wanted to know more about how can I get more from my clients that I was working with. And that then kind of turned into, hey, I can reach more people if I just do a podcast, because I love listening to podcasts. I used to have an hour and a half drive each way. So I spent 3 hours in a car every day, and I would just listen to podcasts the whole way. And it would be, and I wouldn't listen to, some people like to listen to fictional, or I think crime podcasts are really popular, and that's probably one of the biggest categories. But I would just listen to these health related podcasts, and that's what got me onto that journey. So I started my podcast first, and kind of Anisha saw what I was doing, and then she kind of come up with the idea of teaching, helping her students. And when I started create the creation process of podcasts, something about that was just magical, right? I started with zero, right? And I've never considered myself a creative person. I can't draw my drawings look like my 7-year-old's, right? She draws better drawings than I do. But this was the first time where I thought, I'm creating something here which is of value, and it lives out there on the ether forever, right? Podcasts are there. You can go and listen to episode 1 on pretty much any podcast out there. And there was something about that process that I really enjoyed. So when Anisha started her podcast, of course, I was there to help her, to support her with the tech and getting it all up and running. I'm a gadget freak. I love gadgets. I love toys. So there's that side of it as well. But teaching others podcasting has kind of come as a natural way of that. I even, aside from the things that Anisha and I do, I actually have a full-time job where I work for a coach who also has a podcast, and I manage and produce his podcast and all the video content for him. So really, the health space, just going back to what I was doing before, I worked in healthcare technically, right? Working in fitness. Anisha works in healthcare. And I think helping people to spread the message of health is something that's always been very, very important to me. So when it came to kind of combining both of our expertise, Anisha's expertise in health and everything that she's done with Pharmacist Diaries, and my knowledge within health, but also my knowledge in production, I want to see more and more health content out there, because I think Anisha has some stats on this. I don't know if she's got them to hand, but the health category when it comes to podcasts is one of the most underserved, believe it or not. There's loads of podcasts on fitness and nutrition and all of that type of stuff. When it comes to things like medications and, the pharmacy side of things, and even clinicians and doctors, there's not as much information available. So for us, having seen that there are such amazing people out there. Pharmacists, we're here to talk about pharmacists. There are some amazing pharmacists, and I've only known this through Anisha's podcast. I've been listening to these podcasts because I edit them all. And I'm just thinking, why are these people not spreading this message out further? Because they could be helping so many people with the knowledge that they've got, the expertise that they've got, the amount of studying that they've done. I don't have a university degree. Anisha's got 10, so she's made up for both of us. But these people are really smart, and they've got really good information and good knowledge. If they could just share that in the form of a podcast, they could help a lot more people. So that's where the kind of the drive and the passion comes from, is to try and help people to really elevate the quality of information out there. And more, we know this, right? We're living in an age where people go to the internet, they go to Google. YouTube is now, the second most used search engine in the world. People will go to YouTube and search things rather than going to Google. So if you have a podcast that serves a specific audience, is delivering, whether it's healthcare information, whether it's careers information, like Anisha's podcast helps out with, as well as all the other participants you have in your network, Todd. They all have variety of different topics that they talk about. It's just something that we're really, really passionate about, and we decided last year that this is something that we're gonna try and push forward. So that's kind of where it all stems from, and the big why, if you like.
I like that, Anisha. Pharmacist Diaries has been a labor of love for you, and how it's grown, and how it's become such an influence, and how it's really impacted the whole world. I mean, you have people all over the globe that are listening to you and your presence in the United States has really grown even over this last year, of how many people you are now connected with on LinkedIn that are from the United States. And I don't, in the electronic world, I don't feel like you're from the UK. I feel like you're just in the, in the realm of everybody. But talk to us about Pharmacist Diaries, because this has come a long way.
Oh, Pharmacist Diaries has come so far. I started off as audio only because podcasting is, it started off as an audio only platform, but that's, changing as you can see through Pharmacist Diaries and so many other podcasts as well. And I started interviewing individual pharmacists from across the globe and reaching out initially to friends, colleagues, people within pharmacy that had an incredible story that I was aware of. And then I started reaching out to people that I didn't know, people that I would link up with on social media, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. And if I was curious about their story, or they had something really interesting that happened within their career journey through social media, I would just reach out to them and say, hey, like, I've started this podcast, like, come and have a conversation with me. It'll genuinely feel like we're just having coffee together. We're just getting to know each other. And these absolutely beautiful stories came from this, these behind the scenes insights into pharmacists' lives, but not just the pharmacy story. You got to learn about that person as an individual, as, a genuine human being, their interests, what happens with their family life, how do they juggle, home life with family. A lot of people have opened up about things that have been really challenging for them in healthcare, whether that was the pandemic, dealing with, really bad depression. I've had women talk about miscarriages and how that's impacted their work-life balance. And it's just been so incredible to connect with people from all over the globe. I've interviewed people from everywhere, and I have so many more countries also to kind of get to. But so far, there's over 125 countries tuning into the podcast, and a lot of this has been done in my spare time. I've been a full-time pharmacist. I've got 2 young children who are 7 and 2, had a pregnancy as a podcaster, did my master's degree as a podcaster, commuting 3 hours a day to and from work, and getting all this content out there. And, going back to family life and work-life balance, I'm really good with time management. So that's one of my strong suits. Maybe that's why we are so successful as a unit, as a couple, and as parents and employees of 2 different organizations, plus doing an entrepreneur journey. And I really pride myself on that, because I spend so much time figuring out, how can I achieve all my dreams? How can I do all these things that I want to do and chase my passions, and be really successful, but also be a great mother and a great wife too.
You share a lot of that on Pharmacist Diaries, and your conversations with your guests are so intimate, and that it's real. I never feel like I'm being fed some kind of script or anything like that. And I think that goes back to a little bit of the secret sauce of what it is to be a good podcaster, or to develop a good podcast. But let's start at the beginning. I've had this conversation with the both of you already. I've had this conversation hundreds of times with other people that are interested in podcasting. But let's talk about what makes a good podcast. What does make a good podcast? What's your secret sauce? Dial in and just give us some bullet points of what you think makes a good podcast.
For me, it's absolutely, it's a conversation. Like, it's a conversation for me. It's storytelling. It's capturing the really intimate, fun curiosity, kind of like the personality of the pharmacist, and it's genuine interest in that individual and their life. And I freestyle 90% of my episodes. I really enjoy having a conversation with someone. I don't send them questions. I don't generally have themes that we're going to cover. I will obviously research them, their history, what they've done in their career, but I just really enjoy having a conversation with someone. That's my secret sauce, and that curiosity helps me to create an incredible episode. Sunjay's style is slightly different, though. Sunjay is a slightly different podcaster to me. I think he's a lot more factual, and he likes to capture a lot of information from his guests when he was doing a podcast prior to mine. And then when we have conversations with each other, because we've had some special episodes, those are slightly different too, but they are very emotional. We share a lot about our lives through our podcast and our journeys as well.
Sunjay, what do you think makes a good show?
I think you've both alluded to it a little bit already, but it's the host's interest and passion in what they're doing, right? I think if you are talking about a subject matter that you genuinely have an interest in and you want to share and you want to know, Anisha, for example, she's a people person, as you've probably gathered already, right? She likes knowing about people. So when you listen to those episodes, she's genuinely interested, and she doesn't know the answer that's coming, and she wants to know, what this person has done, what their journey has been, why they've done something, because she's genuinely interested in. She wants to know their wins because she's genuinely happy for them, right? It's not fake. And I think that, for me, comes across in a podcast. When I listen to a lot of podcasts, I have listened to a lot of podcasts, and I've stopped listening to a lot of podcasts because I can tell from my own perspective when that host or when that person has kind of tuned out, right? They're kind of just doing it for the sake of doing it. And like I said, if I'm not having fun with something, I'm out. And for me, what makes a really good podcast is the number one thing is the host's genuine interest in what they're doing. And if you are doing, and we can get into this later, but not all podcasts, you have to be interviewing someone. But if you are doing a podcast where you are interviewing someone, you have guests, then having an interest in your guests, and again, you've probably this is why I like podcasts compared to, let's say, television, because on television, news especially, you get 30 seconds, maybe 1 minute to hear someone, try and say something that they could say a lot better in an hour. So when you have someone that's just quick firing questions at someone and they're not following up, they're not remembering what they've said, to me, that's not interesting. To me, having long form conversations with people, that just brings you get something from podcasts that you don't get from other mediums, and that's that intimacy and a chance to really express what you're thinking and what you're feeling.
So how are we going to help listeners? How are we going to help people that are following Anisha and in Pharmacist Diaries, and now, of course, Behind the Mic, that you put this this networking group together? But how are you guys going to help us launch a podcast in 30 days?
So we've broken this down, and we'll go through these stages across these 3 episodes that we're going to do. And I think what I want to talk about today is kind of that first foundational, that first week before you launch. If we're talking about 30 days, what should you be thinking about? And again, we've already alluded to it now, is figuring out what it is that you are going to talk about, right? What is your niche? Oh, we say niche, you say niche over there. I'm gonna say niche because that's what I'm used to saying. I'm gonna own it. I'm gonna own being me and not try and succumb to other norms. We're figuring out your niche, right? What is it that you are passionate about? What is it that you want to talk about? And often when people come up with, or they're starting to think about this, they often think, oh, but no one else is going to be interested in that. Go out there, and I guarantee you, doesn't matter what your niche is, if you are into collecting trains, if you are into, collecting figurines of a particular TV show, there are other people out there who are interested in that stuff as well, right? Trust me, there are. And yeah, you may not get, they may not be in their millions, but again, that's not the reason to do a podcast, right? First and foremost, you shouldn't be starting a podcast because you think, oh, I want to get 1 million followers or 1 million listeners. You're already setting off on the wrong foot. Start a podcast and think about, what is it that you are passionate about? What could you talk about, until the cows come home? What would you not get bored about talking about? And I think that's the first step. So figuring out your niche, defining what your unique angle is going to be. and go out there and see what else is out there. Again, you might surprise yourself. So doing a little bit of market research, go and search those topics, go and find other podcasts, go and find other YouTube channels that are talking about this stuff. Listen, absorb. This process does take time, but you can go out there. And again, we're in an age where there's so much information out there that if you have a specific thing you're honing in on, you can easily find it. And from that, try and distill down, okay, well, this is what X, Y, and Z are talking about. Where would I fit into that? Do I want to, and there's no harm in, I don't want to use the word copying, but you can take ideas from other people. I did that when I first started talking about health and fitness and nutrition. I listened to the Rogans of this world, the Rich Rolls of this world, all of these big podcasters now. Stephen Bartlett is a big one now. And I would take ideas of things that they would say, things that they would talk about, and kind of bring that into my own style. But then also try and find a gap, right? There's always going to be a gap. What is someone not talking about? So when Anisha was talking about, pharmacy, I wouldn't say there was a lot of pharmacist podcasters out there. I mean, we didn't see that many, but a lot of people were talking more clinically, whereas there was a gap when it came to the career side of things. No one was really talking about what is it like to be a pharmacist, right? And that was a gap that she saw. That was a gap she saw with her students, because she realized that a lot of these students who she was teaching, these first-year students, they didn't actually know what a pharmacist was either. Right, they just thought you work in Walgreens or whatever the big pharmacy brands are, Boots over here in the UK, and you just dispense medicine. That's not the case. So try and find that gap in the market, and then kind of take it from there. Anisha, have you got anything else to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to give some good examples for you, just to give some context from the pharmacy point of view. I mean, like I wasn't super passionate about pharmacy careers per se. Like, it's not something that you would associate with me 4 years ago. I have a really cool career. I've worked in hospital, I've worked in community pharmacy, I've obviously worked internationally. And my role there was Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and emergency services, plus working for Cleveland Clinic, then finding pediatrics, education. So I've got this really diverse career where I've worked in loads of different sectors. And that gave me a really good grounding to understand pharmacy as a profession. And though I was reaching out to students, so many other people were listening, whether it was residents starting their journey, whether it was really experienced pharmacists with 20 to 30 years of experience kind of tuning into the podcast. I was really surprised to see the variety of individuals that were tuning in using my analytics. But when you look out on social media, especially on LinkedIn, where a lot of, really popular pharmacists are spending a lot of time, look at people like Jamie Wilkie's a really good example, and she actually had a podcast, but then she moved paths and did other things. But look at people like Tim Ulbrich, your financial pharmacist. He's got an incredible podcast. He's been doing it for years, but he is incredibly passionate about managing your finances, getting out of debt, because a lot of American students have so much debt, whether it's $150,000, $200,000 worth of debt, and finding a way to manage your finances, which is something, again, that we don't get taught in pharmacy school. And he found a gap and is covering, but he's also super passionate about it. And his personal journey involves working with his wife for 4 to 5 years to get out of $200,000+ worth of debt. And he shares stories of other pharmacists. If you look at Tony Guerra, he's got like 500 plus episodes, right, Todd? Because he's part of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. He does everything around pharmacy residency. He's really passionate about it. He knows a lot about it, and he wants to showcase that information in long form, rather than the kind of short social media content that we're very much used to. But one of the things that we talked about a little bit about podcasting is that kind of like long tail effect. And Sanjay's mentioned it a little bit. And the long conversations or the long episodes that you can have, they can last a really long time online. One of my most popular episodes to date in the last, 4 years is a story about entrepreneurship and me starting my entrepreneur journey. And that episode has got the most number of downloads. It is the most searchable content. You can look at it and find it through Google. You don't have to just go onto social media to find it. And people love that episode, and it just continuously gets more and more downloads because it is searchable through Google, through YouTube, and through search search engine optimization. And that's one of the most exciting things about podcasting, is that your content lasts a really, really long time, months, if not years. If you look at things like Instagram, where you have really short form content, I think around the average number, like the percentage of people that see your content if you're following them, is around 6%, which is incredibly small, and it's not necessarily searchable either. And if you're on Instagram after 24 or 48 hours, your content's just gone, which is why I love the whole podcasting story, because people can go back to episodes and kind of find content that they're really interested in. So I just wanted to raise like a few podcasters that I know of in pharmacy who've been doing it for years and years and years, and they've been so successful in their journey. They've become a thought leader. They have shared their knowledge, their expertise, but also if you look at the kind of background as to why they've done it, they're super passionate and they're super interested in that area, and they're able to talk about it for weeks and weeks and weeks, if not months and kind of years.
Yeah, if you're not passionate about it, don't do it. I mean, it's a lot of work. And that's another thing, just to shout out to people that are listening that are on the fence of podcasting. On one side of that fence, I say do it. Jump in and go and work and refine and change and keep going. And consistency is so important in podcasting, because if you start building an audience and then all of a sudden you just stop, your audience will disappear, and then they'll go find something else to listen to. So and then you have to figure out, why are you podcasting? Are you podcasting to bring people to a newsletter or to a course that you have, or to some guidance, or are you doing it for a business? Are you podcasting for a larger organization that wants your insights to now draw people to their products or their services? So dial into the why are you podcasting? Why do I podcast? Well, I podcast because I believe that pharmacists like Anisha need more services in the realm of a network, in the realm of marketing you, in public relations, and getting your voice out there and doing it over and over, and then marrying that voice with a potential revenue stream. Because I can't do this. My wife makes fun of me, when are you going to go get a real job? And I left my real job in 2019 and went 100% into this business of how podcasting is changing media. And the United States election, which I'm so glad it's over. I hated the election, but that whole election process validated the importance and the popularity of podcasting, and how podcasting had an impact on the United States presidential election. That's how big that podcasting has become. I'm going to give you a statistic. The global podcasting market is projected to grow 130 billion with a B by 2030. And so 2025, that's only 5 years from now. Our market right now, last year, is about 120 billion. Looks like it's going to grow about 10 billion more. My own organization, in the revenue that we generate in total, puts us in the top 2% of all podcasts in the world of revenue generation. And it's very small in comparison to big organizations that are out there in publishing. The reason why I'm talking about these numbers is, if you are like a Tim Ulbrich, or you are a Jenna Quinn, that you have a primary reason to be in your business, in your pediatrics, for example, and you marry a blog, a podcast, a video, a social media along with it, you're going to do so much better in growing that core meaning and that core reasoning, the core why. And I still will argue this till the day I die, and that is, podcasting to me is not the primary source of information. It's a secondary source that amplifies the primary source. The primary source is sitting right in front of me. It's the Anisha Patel who has the knowledge in her head. She's the primary source. You're writing the primary source. Your journal article that you showed up in some medical journal that's been peer reviewed, that's the primary source. A podcast will amplify and boost. And I think of this. Think of how many journal articles have been written over the last 5, 10, 20 years that never get any attention, right? And I look at some of our most popular journals and I'm like, if you would just marry that very black and white, sometimes dull information, very granular, very clinical. And if you took that and you got 3 or 4 people in a room, put some mics down, and really did a good podcast and reviewing that journal article and making it more palatable and making it more personal, because you start adding in your own stories about how did hyperlipidemia impact my grandmother that ended up coming up with it? What did that do to our family? And how did that stress us out? And then you start talking about the clinical, and you start talking about the meat and potatoes, the primary information. That is so powerful. So podcasting is only going to get bigger. And like I said at the very beginning of the show, shout out to Sunjay, because you know this, it's easier to podcast today than it was 16 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago when we all started. And that's because you have so much more resource. You have AI that's starting to do helping with editing and all this stuff. However, don't get into it as a medical professional unless you're ready to really get into it. And I know that one side of what I just said 17 minutes ago is just do it, right? Because I'm a gung-ho kind of guy. But I don't want you to do it unless you do it right and unless you do it high quality. So let's talk about that high quality, Sunjay. What are the things that we should be thinking out of the gate? I already know the answer, but I want to hear from you in doing it. But what do we think about when we're just starting to put together a podcast?
Yeah, I think you made some good points there. And, just doing it is one thing. There's another stat. I think, 90% of people that start a podcast stop after 3 episodes.
Yep.
So don't become part of that statistic. If you are going to do it, for me, we could talk about the quality and we could talk about the gear and all of that time. But for me, the quality is going to come from your consistency, right? Because if you are not consistent with putting your content out there, and we can talk about what consistency looks like, then A, you're never going to get better at it. And B, you're never going to give people a chance to, absorb this information. So the consistency, really showing up each week, each month, whatever your consistency is, right? Consistent is once a month for a year is consistent. But once a week for 9 weeks and then you just disappear is not consistent, right? That's not the definition of consistency. So pick whatever that cadence looks like for you and turn up. So I think that's the first thing when it comes to quality. The second most obvious thing, we're starting to get into the technical side here, is of course the audio. Right, podcasts are an audio-first medium. They started out as an audio medium. I believe, Apple were the first people. That's why it's called podcast, because of the iPod. People probably don't know what the iPod is, but it's. I've got one on my wall over here somewhere in a frame, which doesn't work. But yeah, it's an audio-first medium. However, video podcasts are becoming more prevalent, and again, this is something we will talk about. But get your audio right when it comes to audience retention. People will forgive bad video quality if they can hear you right, but they will not forgive poor audio. If you sound rubbish, you sound like you're in an echo chamber, you sound like you're in the toilet, then, people are going to switch off. So I think getting your audio right is going to be the first thing when it comes to the physical quality of your podcast. So consistency for me is number 1, and then the quality of your audio is number 2.
All right, Anisha, we want to hear from you and giving some tips.
Well, I'm a really good example of how that can fail, but then succeed afterwards. But I started podcasting. I was like, Sunjay, I'm doing it. I'm doing every week. I'm doing. He's like, no. He's like, I think you should commit to once every other week, Anisha. Mm-hmm. Listen to me. I'm your husband. I know you well. I know that you're working full time. You've got a child. You are commuting. Just trust me. Just go every other week. I was like, nah, I'm going for weekly.
She didn't trust me.
I'm doing it. And I didn't trust him. I was like, no, I can do it. And I would go all in, try weekly. And I did succeed with weekly. but then I would burn out. And then I might have like 2 to 3 weeks off because I have burnt out. And my cadence with my commitment to those weekly episodes, it was a real struggle. It is hard trying to do weekly episodes with children and work and everything else that you have going on in your life. And then we had the pandemic, and obviously working in the hospital felt like it was a 24/7 cycle. So it was really hard to keep up with that kind of consistency. But in 2024, I made a commitment to weekly episodes, and I achieved it for 365 days. And I'm very proud of that because I saw huge growth in my numbers and my connections through social media. I mean, this weekend, I'm most likely going to reach 10,000 connections on LinkedIn, which is super exciting for me. And, I've been working really, really hard on social media, connecting with the right audience, making connections and meeting up with people virtually. But those weekly episodes were the reason why a lot of my success is shown today, because I made that commitment and I managed to achieve it. But I think if you are a busy professional and you do want to start a podcast and you are working full time, then you really need to sit down and audit how much time per week that you are genuinely going to commit week in, week out. And if that means that you can only produce one episode per month for an entire year, like, that's still amazing. You still can call yourself a podcaster and you're still doing it. And you don't have to go all in with weekly. It actually depends on what your audience wants. They're the ones who are listening to it. I actually find that I don't need to do weekly episodes because my audience aren't the type of people who regularly listen to every single episode I produce, because I talk about careers of early careers pharmacists versus people who have been pharmacists for 30 to 40 years, or if I do like an antimicrobial stewardship series, it's not of interest to everybody. So people kind of chop in and out to my content. So actually I don't need to do it weekly anymore. And I've made the decision to cut back to every other week now because I have lots of other projects that I want to work on as well. But I think once a month is a great place to start, or once every other week. Yeah, once every other week is a great place to start if you're new and you are working full time.
When I work with a client, and there have been some excited clients that want to get into podcasting, they will say, we want to do something. We want to do something once a week. We want to do something every other week. And I'm like, no, I advise no. And they're like, how much? Once every 30 days to start out. If you strengthen yourself once every 30 days, that gives you 29 days to market and to build your next episode. And with being a mom, being a dad, career, going to church, being part of your community, and then a well done, edited marketing, social media, graphics, podcast, that's a lot of work once every 29 days that you have to keep it going, keep it going. So if you're listening right now and you're thinking of starting a podcast and you're excited and you're like, I'm going to go once a week and blah, 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 and just slow down and prove yourself by doing it once every 30 days, or in a series form where you do a whole bunch of podcasts, you put out content all at once. Maybe it's a binge podcast that you do, and then you come back and you announce to your listeners, your audience, through like a blog article or something that, hey, this is a 6-part series. It's now all out, and I'm going to come back every quarter. I'm going to do 6 podcasts, whatever that is. But if you come up with a frequency and you stick to the frequency for a little while, just like exercising, when you get back in shape, just stick to something for 90 days, stick for 6 months, stick to it for a year, and see where it's at. See what it's done for your brand. See what it's done for your business. See what it's done for your career. And it will do something. It's going to move the needle. I guarantee it, because podcasting is so popular now, more than ever before. And I think listeners that are looking for very niche content are going to find your podcast, as long as you're sharing it and pushing it through social media. And that's a big deal. So this series Next week, we're going to be coming back with Anisha and Sunjay, and we're going to dig in a little bit more into the technical. We're going to get into this so that you know what is it like to start a podcast? How do I do it? The guidance. Anisha and Sunjay have behind the mic. We are also partnered with Podbean. So if you sign up with Anisha and Sunjay and you get involved in their course, we're going to give you an opportunity to have 3 months of your hosting through Podbean for free. And they're a wonderful company to work for. It's my 4th hosting platform in 16 years. And it's my favorite of the 4 that I used. And if you ever want to know, I'm not going to say it in this episode, but you want to ever know what I think is the best and the worst of the hosting providers, I definitely have an opinion, and I've paid for them all. But once again, Podbean is going to offer this program. They like what we're doing. They love Pharmacy Podcast Network. They were excited to hear about Anisha's course. I don't have time to teach people how to podcast. I absolutely don't. I have to give all of my attention, or the majority of my attention, to my clients and to my hosts, and to helping to amplify the voice of the pharmacist. And then after you get your podcast going with Anisha and Sunjay, if you want to join the Pharmacy Podcast Network, I would love to have you and be part of this whole ecosystem of us helping each other. I always say #TogetherRx, and doing bigger things and where this could lead us. But in closing up, what do you want to let our listeners know before we wrap up, Anisha?
Just do it. Do it. Reach out to us. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and also go to our landing page where you can sign up to our newsletter, because I love writing newsletters. Sunjay knows this, and I will be providing so much valuable information for you to reflect on the start of your journey into podcasting and understand exactly what it is that gets you to the point of releasing that first episode, as well as everything that I do in terms of promoting it, doing all the social media. And I'm looking forward to connecting with you.
Excellent. Very accessible on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a wonderful, I think it's my most favorite social media platform. Sunjay, in closing, any words of advice for our new podcasters out there?
Yeah, I want to echo what you were saying earlier, Todd. You know, today's actually what we used to call in the fitness industry Big Money Friday, right? Because it's the second Friday in January where everyone who joined the gym quits, right? because they did exactly what you were saying. That I'm going to go 3 times a week, 4 times a week, and they do it for 10 days, and then they burn out, right? So I would say, yes, just do it, but pick your cadence, start slow. And look, if you're interested in this stuff and you're fired, and you probably are, like everyone is in January, fired up about this stuff. We want to do it. We're excited. It can be overwhelming trying to find out where all the information is, and of course I'm going to be biased, but reach out to us. Anisha's curated a beautiful newsletter, or even on LinkedIn, we have a LinkedIn dedicated newsletter. There's tons of editions of that newsletter already out. We've got loads of information on there. We've distilled it all down for you, made it really, really simple. So go and digest all of that. Just immerse yourself in this, in the learning and the how. And just through osmosis, this stuff will start to sink in, and it will start to make sense. And then, of course, tune in next week, because we're gonna go deep. We're gonna go deep next week. Be ready. Bring your snorkels.
Bring your snorkels. That's right. Well, I'm excited about this. Like I said, I want to deliver something through the network that will really teach future pharmacists, pharmacy students, pharmacy professionals, our technicians, how to podcast, how to launch your podcast in 30 days. I'm excited to have Anisha and Sunjay leading us in this series. Once again, behind the mic, launching your podcast in 30 days. This has been an absolute wonderful time with the both of you. I love it. I love just listening to you both. I love the dynamic of husband and wife in podcasting. And I said to Anisha a bunch of times, my wife's a nurse. She'll never podcast. She's never podcasted with me, tells me not even to ask her anymore. So I'm a little jealous that you guys get to do this together. I think it's pretty cool.
Thanks for having us, Todd. It's good fun.
We're the 3 musketeers now, Todd. Yeah. You're part of the group.
I'm part of the group. I'm here in the middle. I'm twerking over here.
Basically.
we are excited about 2025. If there's anything that we can do for you, if I can do for you in your profession and your career as a pharmacist, as a technician, please reach out to me. Also on LinkedIn, very easy to find, Todd Eury, or you can Google RX Podfather. I'm the one that comes up every time. We appreciate what you do. A shout out to you. I hope you guys have a great week, and I appreciate you listening to This Week in Pharmacy. Please subscribe on all platforms, on Podbean or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast. And we will be with you next week. Sunjay and Anisha will be back. We'll see you next week. See ya.
Yeah.